So, good afternoon, and thank you for joining us today. Like it was said, I'm Staff Sergeant Ryan Preece. I'll spell my last name Preece, and I'm with the General Investigations Unit of the Calgary Police Service, District 5. I'm here to provide some information about an investigation into an appalling assault experienced by a member of our racialized community. The victim and her family are also here today to share a statement on the impact that this incident has had on them all. Ms. Hay's sister will read the statement after my remarks. But first, we recognize the impact racist actions can have on our members of our community, and we take these investigations into crimes against racialized communities very seriously. We hope by sharing this information about the incident publicly that we can identify the man wanted in relation to this assault. So on February 11th, Thursday, 2021, at approximately 4:15 p.m., a woman approached the entrance of the Dollarama located at 5401 Temple Drive Northeast. As she was about to enter, a man was exiting the store. She stepped aside to allow the man to leave, at which point, without provocation, he spit on the woman and called her a racial slur. The man then left the area on foot. A sample of the saliva from the victim's clothing was submitted to the DNA laboratory in hopes of obtaining a match. Results from such tests can take several months to obtain, and we are still awaiting that information. We also obtained the CCTV footage from the scene. Still images of the suspect were subsequently distributed to all members of the Calgary Police Service and Calgary Transit employees to help identify the individual responsible for this assault. We have yet to be able to identify the man with the photos and are now seeking assistance from Calgarians. He is described as olive-skinned, approximately 6 feet tall, with a medium build. He had on a gray jacket and was carrying a white plastic bag. Photos of the suspect are available on the City of Calgary newsroom. Anyone with information on the identity of this man is asked to contact the Calgary Police Service by calling 266-1234 or by contacting Crime Stoppers. It's vital that any member of the public who has information about this suspect is to contact us. We are committed to ensuring that we work every day towards creating a community where racism is not tolerated, accepted, nor present on our streets. So I now invite our victim, Tianna Hay, and her sister, Natasha Russell, to read a statement.
Growing up, as a Canadian Jamaican, having two immigrant parents, worked tirelessly to provide a safe and loving environment, has been a wholesome experience. They taught me that kindness and respect are to be given to each individual, no matter what they may look like or where they come from. Over the past 22 years, I have upheld these values and continue to implement these teachings in my day-to-day life. Being a Black woman in Canada has its struggles. I've been stereotyped on multiple occasions, more than I can count. Whether it be being racially profiled as a retail employee, follows me around the store assuming I'm going to shoplift, along with discrimination and systematic biases that are still prevalent in today's society. But never until February 11th, 2021, on my own mother's birthday, did I have another human being completely disregard my right to decency and respect. While attempting to enter the Dollarama store in the worst possible way, I was racially targeted simply because of the dark brown complexion of my skin. An unmasked stranger who felt as though my Blackness was a menace to his presence thought it'd be okay to assault me. He locked eyes with me, approached me, and spat in my face and body, shortly after shouting, "You N-word." And again, quickly again, with more raging anger and hatred in his voice, he repeated himself. "Yeah, I called you an effing N-word." The blare in his voice lingers in my head, and the image of his face cannot seem to evade my memory. That racial slur is not something that I savor or retain in my vocabulary. It carries centuries of anguish and hostility towards people that came before me and who look just like me. The same racial slur used hundreds of years ago to offend Black people miserably draws and builds on historical oppression that evidently still lives on today. This offense has impacted my life in ways that I did not know were possible. I've become paranoid and traumatized since this horrific incident. I have difficulties trying to complete daily activities without feeling anxious and panicked. I find myself constantly on edge, scanning my surroundings in terror that this cruel encounter may happen again or worse. I no longer permit myself the freedom of shopping for necessities alone. Either a family member or close friend that I trust accompanies me the simple task of shopping. This crime replays in my mind over and over again, making me question what I did wrong to deserve such a violation. I have to frequently remind myself that I did not provoke nor instigate such an indecent offense. It has become impossible for me to shop at my local grocery store just 3 minutes away from my home in a community that I grew up in and love. This is now a luxury that I can no longer afford or feel safe doing. The simple things we expect to do freely without persecution as human beings and members of a diverse society, I am no longer secure doing. I now live in fear of another unprovoked incident taking place, which no individual or group should have to endure. I have never experienced this degree of racism and hatred that is so degrading and vile. I'm still wrestling with the effects of this traumatic experience, which has left me feelings of vulnerability, fear, and paranoia unlike anything I've ever felt before. I feel humiliated, dehumanized, disempowered, and silenced to this day. These acts of hate should not be overlooked and must be addressed. I'm asking for you and your assistance in identifying and locating the suspect so that extensive consequences can be applied. The aggressor believes that it is okay to inflict harm and prejudice upon people of color, which we should not stand for. As I and my family suffer through this situation, your assistance is needed so that justice can be done and peace may be attained.
We will now turn the mic back over to Staff Sergeant Ryan Priest to answer questions. Our first question comes from Michael King at Global. Go ahead, Michael.
Hi there. I wanted to ask a question about the road rage incident that was also spoken about earlier today. Specifically, we saw on one Facebook post that there was a Palestinian flag in the back window. What role do you think that may have played in the hate motivation aspect of that incident?
Thank you for the question. We are going to be speaking about that event after this conference. The focus right now is going to be on Tianna and her story and the impacts to her family. So we will have Constable Collins here speaking to that, but I just ask you to postpone that question for a few more minutes.
Michael, do you have any questions specific to Tianna's situation?
Yeah, just in terms of the timeline of when this happened and now coming forward to the public, what avenues have kind of come up dry in terms of trying to identify the suspect?
Yeah, thank you for the question. So the event occurred on February 11th when Tianna was leaving the Dollarama, and at which point the event took place. Our patrol member was responding to that complaint, met her at her house, I believe a few hours later. At that point, the statement was taken with her and her family. At that point, a swab was taken of the saliva that remained on her jacket, and that evening sent away to the RCMP crime lab, where it was approved for processing. And the next day, we had our forensic crime scene unit come in and obviously took a volunteer sample of Tianna's blood to compare with whatever DNA, if any, was to be found. And then we had members of our hate and bias unit, Constable Collins, follow up with the individual afterwards. And the night of the event, our patrol member did go to the Dollarama, spoke to staff, attempting to get some type of indication that maybe there's an altercation inside. There was no information to suggest that occurred. And then we did manage to get the CCTV video off that. That took about a week. Unfortunately, we had to go to a third party to request that. The vendor that has the surveillance tapes is out of the country, so it took a little while to get that. And the day that on February 18th that we did receive that CCTV footage, Calgary Police Service put together a need to identify that went citywide to all Calgary Police members, and we circulated the Calgary Transit officers as well. Both those avenues didn't provide any insights into who this offender might be, at which point now our next step here is to reach out to the public for some more support.
Michael, we'll come back to your question with Constable Collins at the end, but for now we're going to move on to a question from 660 News with Jared.
Hey there, can you hear me?
I can hear you fine, Jared. Thank you.
I just wanted to clarify first off, that was Tianna that was reading that statement, correct?
That's right. We had a very brave young lady that decided to pop up and read her own statement. The original plan was attached, was going to help her out, but thank you for that, Tianna.
I guess my follow-up here is maybe you can speak to this. Has there been an increase that the Calgary Police has seen maybe within the last year or so when it comes to hate crimes? I feel as though just working in news and seeing frequent releases regarding hate crimes, curious if you could speak to that.
Not with the details of how we classify hate crimes within the organization. Again, a perfect question for Constable Collins to address afterwards. How an investigation is deemed to be motivated by hate is why we have this organization in place.
Thank you.
Thanks, Jared. That's it for our questions specific to Tianna. So maybe we'll bring Constable Collins up now and he can address maybe Jared's question first since it's fresh, and then we'll go back to Michael King.
Thank you.
Good afternoon, everybody. I think everybody knows me, but Senior Constable Craig Collins with the Calgary Police Service, and I'm the hate crime coordinator. I'll just pick up on the last question. So I think if I understood it right, the question was, are we seeing an increase in hate-related crimes? And I think the time frame that was provided was from last year. The simple answer is yes, we are seeing an increase in hate-motivated incidents coming through the service, but that's a trend that is being followed, well, not even exclusively. It's being followed through all police services in North America, and if you look further apart, I also think that you look back at the unfortunate incidents of last year and some of the high-profile cases. People are becoming more aware of what a hate crime is and the hate bias that impacts criminal offences. And we have more people, such as Tianna, that are prepared to come forward and report these incidents to the police service. Does that answer the question?
Jared, do you have a follow-up to that at all?
No, that's great. Thank you. I appreciate it.
We'll move on to Michael from Global. Michael, do you want to go ahead and ask your question about the road rage incident?
Yes, thank you. From one of the Facebook posts, we did see a Palestinian flag in the back of the victim's car. How much do you think that played into the incident?
It's a really good question, and like being honest, I think there is an element that may have played in there. The investigation is still in its early stages, so there's a lot more inquiries that need to be carried out before I would feel comfortable in answering that question and saying that the Palestinian flag had any bearing on the attack yesterday.
And as a follow-up, there's calls from the community that a mischief to a vehicle is underselling what actually happened here. What are the chances that we're going to be looking at a more egregious charges moving forward?
As I said, the investigation is in its infancy. I have spent a lot of the morning talking to our community members, our community contacts. Just because the mischief offence was laid yesterday does not preclude any other offences coming forward. It just meant that yesterday there was sufficient evidence for our officers who did an amazing job to lay charges and put somebody before a court. The investigation is still ongoing, and if we determine there are other offences there, then those charges will also follow.
Thank you.
We have a question from Jordan at CTV. Go ahead, Jordan.
Oh, yeah, thank you for taking the question. Just kind of a follow-up to that. You mentioned that I understand the investigation is in its infancy, but when we spoke to the victim just about an hour and a half ago, he said that no one from the hate crimes unit or anything has talked to him or any members of the community. What is the timeline, the usual timeline for an investigation like this, and when is the victim usually talked to?
The victim was spoken to at 8:34 this morning, because I personally spoke to the victim. So maybe the victim didn't understand that I was from the hate crime team, but I can assure you the victim was spoken to first thing this morning and is communicating with me.
Jordan, do you have a follow-up at all?
I do, and thank you for that last clarification. Just in incidents like this, and you said that hate-motivated incidents and investigations are up. How do you feel as a constable at the optics, I guess, of a charge like this coming out that is only related to the traffic incident, when we could have a hate-motivated incident? Are you concerned at all that this may not be harsh enough, so to speak, especially when we're dealing with these type of incidents?
I'm not really sure the question you're asking me here. So the charges that were laid were a criminal mischief to the motor vehicle, and then there were subsequent charges laid under the Traffic Safety Act. So there are a number of charges that have been laid on the initial offence yesterday. As I said, there is still an active investigation going forward, looking at the totality and additional witnesses. I can tell you that I've spoken to additional witnesses today to obtain extra evidence in relation to that investigation. So I think there's a little bit of unjustness here. We did and we have acted very thoroughly. The investigation is still ongoing, and I think when we talk about hate crimes, we forget that in Canada, any criminal offence that is motivated in whole or part by somebody's hate or bias can be taken to court as a hate-themed investigation, and that's what we are doing today. That's what we've been doing for years. We are very progressive in our approach to this type of incident.
Can I just clarify there, just in the release that we got earlier today, it said that the man was charged with mischief to a motor vehicle. That's the only charge that is mentioned. You just mentioned that there were a couple of other charges as well. Can you just clarify what those were?
Yeah, there's the criminal mischief charge, and then there were traffic citations issued under the Traffic Safety Act in relation to that whole incident.
Thank you.
That appears to be our last question for today. So thank you to everyone who joined us for this press conference.